Between the Neville Public Museum and Children's Museum of Green Bay will not move forward. A task force formed in May to study whether the two could combine under one roof at the Neville made its final decision this morning, and it recommended both museums suspend exploration of a merged organization and shared occupancy. Instead, the report urges each museum to pursue its own strategic vision, calling on the Children's Museum to reimagine its future and find a long-term home. The Neville is encouraged to use new leadership and underutilized space to build a stronger cultural campus downtown. The Greater Green Bay Community Foundation, which led the process, says it will continue to support both institutions as they move ahead separately.